Well, one of my favorite movies of all time is the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angela Jolie. And it starts out with them in couples counseling. Take a listen.
Okay, I'll go first. Let me say, we don't really need to be here. See, we've been married 5 years.
6.
5, 6 years. And this is like a checkup for us. Chance to poke around the engine, maybe change the oil, replace a seal or two.
Very well then. Let's pop the hood. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you as a couple?
8.
Wait. 10 being perfectly happy and 1 being totally miserable, or?
Just respond instinctively.
Okay. Ready?
Ready.
8.
How often do you have sex?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I'm lost. Is this a 1 to 10 thing?
But because, like, is 1 very little or is 1 nothing? Because, you know, technically speaking, the 0 would be nothing.
How about this week?
Including the weekend?
Sure. Describe how you first met.
It was in Colombia.
Bogota. 5 years ago.
6.
Right, 5 or 6 years ago.
Now, in this movie, you see it starts out with them being clearly adversaries. They have this adversarial approach. Now, of course, as the movie goes on, you realize it probably doesn't help that each of them is a respective contract killer with a contract out to kill their partners. At least that's how I remember it. And as the movie progresses and their attempts to kill each other are unsuccessful, you have this final scene where they're fighting off the enemy back to back with each other against what is now their external enemy. They are now allies, no longer adversaries. Today we want to explore that topic on Finding Traction. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, let me mention at the start that if you want some helpful resources on recovery or you want to connect with me, you can do so at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. And it's a chance for you. I often do just kind of intro meetings with guys on Zoom to hear their story and explore whether or not individual or group counseling would be helpful for them with me as a coach. So I'd love to hear from you regarding that. Or if you just want some general information, you can go on the website, which is bandofbrothers.care. And there's a number of free resources on that as well. So last week, I kind of gingerly approached this whole topic about how spouses feel hurt and betrayed by their husbands and how they can respond in a helpful way towards their goals of recovery and a restored relationship. And I ended that podcast by saying that one of the goals needs to be, in fact, one of the necessities needs to be that the couple ends up operating as allies, not adversaries. Which, of course, brings me back to the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, you cynics out there are thinking, yeah, well, look how well that worked out for Brad and Angelina in real life. But I say, stop it. Don't mess with my movie word picture. Fiction works better for me in that sense. Now, me and my wife, we led a marriage course for 12 years. And we literally took hundreds of couples through some of the best marriage material from people like John Gottman, Gary Smalley, Gary Chapman. We kind of wrapped it all together in this 6-week course that we wrote. And one of the biggest takeaways from that course was this idea of teamwork. The idea of teamwork is this: whenever you face a problem as a couple, successful couples, as opposed to unsuccessful couples, they can project the problem out as something separate and independent from each other. So the problem's not me, the problem's not you, the problem is out there. There's you and there's me. We're on the same side of the field, or the pitch for you British. We're wearing the same uniforms, and the problem is the other side, those wearing different uniforms. Like the guy that showed up on my coaching call this week with a Philadelphia Eagles hat, which wasn't cool. The idea is to be on the same team. Don't forget that. And the idea of this is successful couples work through their problems where their problem is separated out as independent from their couple unity. I know we're going through this right now, me and my wife. We've been dealing with the unraveling health of my wife's mother. We both had to head down to Arizona on short notice at Christmas time. We had to move her out. We had to sell her place, sell her car. It was an untenable situation. And then we moved her into an old folks' home. That didn't work out. And now we're in the process of moving her up to Canada. And there's all sorts of stresses on this situation. There's decisions we're making. The stresses include financial, and I won't go into it, but there's lots of stresses. And sometimes I've been frustrated with my wife, and my wife has been frustrated with me at the initial sense of how we've made these decisions. But we've so far, and hopefully will continue as she moves up this coming week, we continually have operated as being on the same team. We say that to each other over and over again. We're on the same team. It's not your mother-in-law. We're on the same team. So you say, okay, I see how that could work with something like, something outside of the two of you. But no. We're talking here about usually one person's struggle with porn. How is that not that person's problem? How is that an us problem? Because it's just so easy and so self-evident. Like, let's say the husband's struggling with porn. Well, the problem is him and his behavior, and he needs to stop. Simple. Now, and I get it. Your husband's porn behavior affects the two of you. But I'm telling you, you would be far better served if, for the sake of your relationship, you see this as something beyond just your partner. Yes, it involves him. Yes, it is his behavior, but you can still learn to operate as a team. Yes, you don't want this in your life, but let me let you in on a secret here. He probably doesn't want this in his life either, so you have that in common. You see, whenever we completely personalize the issue, the problem is you, then we're not going to get very far if our desire is to build a better relationship. I've been coaching guys for 15 years plus. A number of years ago, I talked my wife usually when you talk your partner into doing something, it's not going to end well. Well, this was a good example. I talked my wife into meeting with a number of the wives of the guys I was working with. Apparently a number of them wanted to meet my wife and talk to her. And so I arranged this meeting, and a number of these wives got together with my wife. And when she came back, I asked her how it went. She said, "Don't ever make me do that again." She says, "I felt like I was at the Angry Wives Club." Now, it wasn't that they were hurt and angry, but they were continually personalizing the issue. My husband is such a jerk. Oh yeah? You think your husband's bad? Well, my husband's even a bigger jerk. And they went on and on and on. And what happens was she was so discouraged because the women had so personalized the problem, and they were no longer able to even figure out how to approach this as a team, how to approach this in terms of working together. They just wanted to bash their husbands. And she says, well, that wasn't, at one level, it made them, I guess, feel better. And that might be something out of the motive level. But there was no sense of how actually we're going to work together towards a better future. So I have not since then talked my wife into meeting with women. So what does it mean to be an ally and not an adversary? First of all, let me say this. I want to give you a couple things that being an ally does not mean. First of all, being an ally does not mean taking responsibility for his recovery. He is the one responsible for his recovery. And I often ask, if I ever get to connect with women or talk to women or women email me about where their husbands are at, I ask them questions similar to this. Is your husband, your fiance, whatever, is he taking serious, concrete steps to get better? Can you see evidences of that? Or is he predominantly minimizing, deflecting, evading responsibility, and putting it on you? That's a whole different thing. If that was the case, you can't operate as a team because he's still sitting on the bench. So I am all for taking your husband, taking responsibility for his recovery. And partly I am going under the assumption that there is evidences of him doing that. So that's the first thing it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that you as the wife, for example, the fiance, the girlfriend, are going to take responsibility. The second thing is it does not mean that you are going to be his accountability partner or accountability buddy. It's not helpful for you to be privy to every one of his sexual thoughts or ideas or real-time processing with his recovery. See, that's where an accountability group comes in. And by the way, that is probably the clearest way that I could, if you just had one thing that would be a bit of a litmus test, whether or not a guy was serious about taking responsibility, is he willing to engage with an accountability group? Now, in accountability groups, good ones, we support each other, but we're also incredibly honest and vulnerable with each other. Guys share what they're some of their thoughts, some of their internal things. They're sharing things like, man, I was at the bank the other day and all of a sudden there's this brand new pretty teller. And man, I just really wrestling with that now. Should I go back to the bank? Should I choose a Those are all the kind of things you don't process with your wife. You don't need to know all of that. You say, well, should you be telling anything to your wife? Of course you could. Of course you should. For example, me and my wife have an agreement. If I ever violate the boundaries of my recovery, if I look at porn again, for example, then we have an agreement that I will tell her that. And I have the confidence that I'm not going to get the nuclear response that we spoke about last time. So, two things it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you as the partner are going to take responsibility for his recovery. And the second one, it doesn't mean that you're now becoming his accountability buddy. That's not what I'm saying when we're talking about being an ally. What do I mean by being an ally? Number one, it means that you are his honesty ally. And what I mean by that is you are inviting him, and here's most importantly, you are allowing him to be honest. Many women say they want their husbands to be honest with them, but then they punish them when they do. See, you can't have it both ways. What you could say is, I may be hurt, my emotions may get involved, but I still need you to be honest with me. Anything else leaves us on separate teams. That's a little bit why last week I spoke on the podcast about what I call the nuclear option, and the nuclear threat threatens a relationship because it doesn't encourage the necessary honesty for the two of you to move forward together. So being an ally means you are inviting and allowing honesty. Here's the second one. Being his practical ally. Practically, he's going to need your help. You're the one who's living with him. You're the one who's with him. He needs help in some very practical ways. For example, you may need to be the safe person in helping facilitate a low-risk environment for him. For example, in our house, my wife has the password for the television. All of the adult channels, it's like they don't exist because they're all behind a password. They don't even show up on the menu. She has the password for my PS4. We have passwords on things like Amazon Prime that if we want to watch a show, she will type the password in. My wife has a combination for a lockbox where I put all my remote controls in every night so that they're not out during the next day. My wife has the password for my smartphone so I don't have the App Store on my Apple phone. When I need to do updates, for example, I practically need her help. I need her to type the password in so I can do all of my app updates. Now, let me go back to what I said before. I am still the one taking responsibility. Oftentimes, my wife's not thinking about the remote controls. Every night, she wouldn't think about putting them away. I do. I take responsibility. If my wife's going out, I say, hey, babe, can you grab, there's one remote control in particular, can you throw that remote control in your purse? I'm taking responsibility. It's not on her. If she forgets, it's not her fault. My responsibility. But she can be my practical ally. She can help me stay safe. Now, to be honest here, I've heard that sometimes, ladies, you're reluctant to do this. Sometimes it's what I've heard is that you're almost resentful that your partner's still struggling. And every time you have to type a password in, every time you have to help him, you remind him this is not cool. You resent, and the fact of why are you still at this point? Or, why are you still a child that you can't not look at, your phone when I'm out or whatever? All of those sort of things, you're not going to be his ally. He's not going to be successful. And you need to invite him to let you help him in terms of some of these practical areas. Or you can make it hard for your husband to rely on you as an ally. Here's a third thing, and this is a broader one. To be an ally means you become a supportive person for him. I know you long to have him as a supportive person for you. I know there's things in your life you're working hard on. Hopefully there's things in his life, like recovery, that he's also working hard on. You need to support each other. Now, last week I said, and I still believe it, let me just be clear here, the problem when it comes to sex, for example, the problem is not one of lack of sex, and the solution is not more sex. If someone ever tells you that the reason he has a porn problem because you're not having enough sex, or the solution for your porn problem is you need to have more sex, they don't have a frickin' idea what they're talking about. Bad advice. At the same time, it's not a bad idea to plan time together if life has conspired against you to keep the two of you apart sexually. I've heard this from sex therapists in terms of over and over again. For example, a man will feel as good about his married life as he does about his sex life. So if his sex life is off the rails, he's not going to feel good about his married life. Now, if his sex life is fine, and many guys that struggle with porn I work with have really good sex lives. But if they don't, then the challenge, if they do have good sex life, then there's all sorts of other stuff that they, are working on. But in terms of a guy's perception, it is important. So if your sex life has fallen off the rails, it's important for you to address that as a couple. Again, you can't sex your way out of a porn struggle. And even if you never have sex again, your husband is still responsible for his sexuality. So that's one way. Maybe there's some supportive things. There's other ways to be supportive. You're at your restaurant and your husband's having a hard time with his line of vision, and he says, "Hey, can I switch seats? I'm just being distracted." Now I can be that way if there's a football game on over her shoulder. I got to switch seats with her. But if there's somebody that her eyes are drawn to, then you can be supportive. Thank you for not wanting to continue to gaze at that person. Right? That's just, or you can get really mad at him. How could you dare even notice another woman? That's not supportive. We were out walking a little while ago, and my wife made one of the most supportive statements to me I can remember. We were out walking, and all of a sudden, there was this gal in front of us, and she was dressed. It was not just to the nines, but it was the most provocatively dressed person. And my wife was like, "Oh my." My wife was blown away. So it's like she was blown away. So if I'm blown, it's just like, "Oh my, maybe we should walk another way." And I was like, "Thank you." Or it's like, "How could you? How could you even notice that woman?" Right? Supportive. Perhaps you're going to the beach, with the kids, and your wife says, "Hey, let me just scope out the beach quickly and find a safe place for us to park or whatever, to go to the beach and put out our blankets or whatever." There's dozens of different ideas. The whole idea is that you are playing a supportive role. Just in the same way that you would want your husband to help protect you where you feel vulnerable, your husband also desires and longs for you to help protect him where he feels vulnerable. So in conclusion, here is to being on the same team. Here is to dealing with a common threat and growing closer in the struggle. So I'd love to hear from you, man or woman. I'd love to hear. You can connect with me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com if you find this helpful. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love you to give a rating on the podcast. And let me just say, if there's just ideas or questions you have based on this, please email me at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. Till next time, God bless.